Chapter 1130 is easily a 10 out of 10 chapter, one of my favorites of the year, and it has begun filling in the gaps of time and information regarding ELBAPH's recent history, while also providing an infinite amount of questions, as is customary when even a smidge of lore is revealed, but that's okay because the art is incredible, the designs are spectacular, and the aura is absolutely off the charts. Anyway, for all the build-up we have had to ELBAPH and how important this arc seems like it will be in the wider narrative and the boundless history it could have that leads all the way back to the Void Century and beyond, we only have a concrete idea about the country's past for around 100 years. That is a lot of time, it's an entire century, but in the context of One Piece and the Giants, it's nothing at all. I mean, Dr. Kureha was already in her 40s a century ago, but there's a lot that's happened regarding ELBAPH and the Giants in that time. And each of these events will definitely play into the current arc and its story threads. There's absolutely no doubt that ELBAPH was one of the most important pieces of the actual Void Century conflict 800 years ago, but that is a story we haven't been told yet, and beyond that, all we know of the country's history beyond those 100 years are just the births of some certain giants, since their lifespans are like 3 times that of regular humans, so like the giant Jarl, the elder of the village, and one of the former co-captains of the giant warrior pirates who we saw in Big Mom's flashback. He's the one who didn't get his skull crushed by the obese 5-year-old. He was born over 400 years ago. The point is that there's definitely a lot of lore that has yet to be uncovered, and it's gonna be some of the most exciting and hype lore in the entire story. But at this point in time, we just don't know any of it, and anything we do know about before that 100 years isn't relevant, but for the sake of detail, let's note the existence of the giant warrior pirates. Given that one of their former co-captains, the elder Jarul, is over 400 years old, that means that crew has been around for centuries. And to the best of my knowledge, they're the only pirate crew to have succession, where new leaders replace the old. And on that topic of succession, we have this 100-year timeline which starts in place, name and location with Dory and Broggy, who over 100 years ago became the co-captains of the giant warrior pirates, and then 102 years ago, 100 years pre-timeskip, began their duel on the then unnamed Little Garden, with said duel being fought over who had caught the bigger fish. And since this duel is an isolated incident completely separate to the rest of ELBAPH's recent history, there's no real need to go into the details of what went on at Little Garden, aside from the question of their true strength, which I am maybe unreasonably so very passionate about, and this subject is all the more relevant given the introduction of arguably the strongest giant of them all alive right now. First, their bounties. 100 years ago, they were given a combined bounty of 200 million berries, 100 million per head, and in the present day post-egghead incident, their bounties have been updated with inflation factored in, and they are each worth 1.8 billion berries, a bounty that they are more than worthy of. This whole debate revolves around the actions of Mr. 3 during that Little Garden arc, where his underhanded tactics enabled him to get the better of both those giants. And without remembering or paying attention to the context, some people have been disrespecting them. So with their duel, it's a result of their culture as warriors, where their feud had to be settled with an honourable battle. And as warriors of ELBAPH, I have absolutely no doubt that they would have been giving their all in each round, meaning right after their latest duel in the arc, they were nowhere near 100%, and then Dory literally had his insides blown up because Mr. 3 had rigged his drink with explosives, yet he still got up and fought the next round. And for Broggy, he had just thought he'd killed his best friend. No matter how glad he was to have won the duel, I'm sure the grief was the stronger emotion, which is much more apparent after seeing how broken he was when he found out the truth. So he was mentally nerfed, as some people call it, which also means that the reason Mr. 3 was able to capture Broggy with his wax was a combination of all these factors, let alone Mr. 3 himself making it clear he had no chance against them head on. I mean, look at this attack, the Spear of ELBAPH Hakoku Sovereignty, which shot straight through the Island Eater. Even if only one of them were to launch the attack, Mr. 3 would be nothing but a pile of rubble. So to conclude this subsection, respect Dory and Broggy. And back to ELBAPH 87 years ago, where the giant warrior pirates found themselves in disarray following their separation from their co-captains. A few of them were captured and sentenced to execution by the navy until Mother Carmel stepped in with a false display of grandeur, which painted her as some sort of savior in the eyes of the giants, although the true intention behind her actions was to get access to ELBAPH to sell greater merchandise to the navy. Exhibit A, John Giant, who got his shit rocked by Whitebeard during the Paramount War, was the first giant that Mother Carmel got enlisted into the Marines. So with all of the fake sun gods running around recently, you could say that Mother Carmel was the original imposter. And soon after came the Big Mom incident. 63 years ago, she was abandoned by her parents who couldn't control her destructive nature, and she fell into the hands of Mother Carmel. She felt at home amongst the giants, but one thing she was incompatible with was the 12-day fast in honor of the sun, the Winter Solstice Festival, where she rampaged in a hunger pang and killed Yorul, the other one of the former co-captains of the giant warrior pirates and one of the heroes of the giants, which led to her leaving the island alongside Carmel and the rest of the orphans of the sheep's house. Thus began the giant's everlasting hatred for Big Mom, which would only grow, although unconfirmed it is widely believed that she would unknowingly cannibalize Carmel and the orphans in an eating fit on her 6th birthday, which was witnessed by a giant of ELBAPH who reported back, and the giant's fury grew even greater. It would be interesting to see if the giants still talk about Mother Carmel in the present day, or if she's been forgotten, since even though the heavenly mystique was a result of her soul powers, the giant's memory of her was solely positive, since she was masquerading as some divine messenger of the sun god. I don't know how they could ever come to know the truth, but that could be an interesting little side thing on ELBAPH, Mother Carmel's legacy against the true sun god's arrival. Plus, it was also around this time of the Winter Solstice Festival that a certain accursed prince Loki was born. Then there's a bigger jump to 22 years ago, just after the Ohara incident, where Vegapunk visited the island after witnessing Hiruden and his crew collect Ohara's knowledge and take it back to ELBAPH, with said knowledge now being kept for safekeeping in a library somewhere on the island, a library which I think will be called Vanaheim, and this library will hold the greatest collection of knowledge and mysteries in the entire One Piece world, meaning it will be the biggest puzzle piece so far in learning the true history. While Vegapunk was there, he memorized the entire catalogue, which means that Lilith, the only remaining active Vegapunk, will definitely be very important when the time comes for that information to be revealed. And in that library, and living in the land of the giants, is Jaguar D Soul, who isn't a native of ELBAPH. If you remember back in the Nico Robin flashback, he mentioned that he wasn't the biggest fan of ELBAPH, presumably because of the whole warrior culture, but he's actually from a different tribe of giants. Now, there are no set dates for this bit, but it is everything surrounding the events of Prince Loki, 2 in particular, and it's unclear which one came first. So starting with the one we found out about first, Loki somehow came across Lola, daughter of Big Mom, and was instantly smitten by her. And this led Big Mom to attempt an arranged marriage between them, much to Loki's delight, although this fell through when Lola ran away and Big Mom's plan B of using Chiffon, Lola's twin sister, as a substitute failed. So the whole ordeal fell apart, and once again the giant's animosity towards Big Mom grew even larger. The reasoning behind putting this first is that from what we saw of the situation, Loki didn't look anywhere near as vicious as we've seen him look in the present, and the giants surrounding him were also seemingly celebrating the potential marriage, so this may very well be before he became the shame of ELBAPH. Lola is only 26 years old, which means that this couldn't have happened that long ago. Maybe when she was 16 did this happen, similarly to how Pudding, who is 16 years old today, got engaged to Sanji for one of Big Mom's plans, so 10 years ago at most for this Loki-Lola failed marriage. And the second incident is the imprisonment of Loki and how he became to be known as the Shame of ELBAPH. There was a certain devil fruit of legendary status which was passed down through the royal line of the country. My idea is that it had been handed down through the royal lineage since the Void Century ended, and the reason why it wasn't being eaten is because it was being saved for a giant to consume at the time of the world's liberation, the final war, and that fruit was at the time in the possession of Loki's father, King Harald. and it was theoretically meant to be passed down to Hiruden, the eldest son of Harald and older brother of Loki, only for Loki to eventually kill his father to obtain the fruit and eat it himself, which led to him being sentenced to crucifixion. Although he had managed to escape, and it took the combined might of ELBAPH's strongest warriors to hold him down, and he was chained to the base of the World Tree Yggdrasil. And once chained, I doubt the giants would have risked unchaining him for anything, let alone for a marriage proposal. And this gives more reasoning to Hiruden's actions during Dressrosa, where he fought in the Colosseum to obtain Ace's fruit, the Mera Mera no Mi, the flame fruit. Maybe as an alternative to the one that Loki ate, and he also mentioned becoming king of ELBAPH, which doesn't seem like a mere pipe dream anymore. And we have reached the present day, or near enough the present day, the final saga. In a port on the coast of ELBAPH, Shanks visited the island to say hello to some old friends he thought were dead, who most people presumed to be Dory and Broggy, who had finally returned to the country after Oimo and Kashi went to pick them up. Although their initial intention was only to rearm so they could continue their duel, but they ended up helping Shanks in destroying the Kid Pirates, whose ship was destroyed and sank off of that same coast where Shanks was. And he presumably left ELBAPH soon after this, while Dory and Broggy set out for Egghead with the giant warrior pirates reunited to pick up Luffy and the Straw Hats. Hiruden also offered to go, although Dory and Broggy had seniority. So the two co-captains command a huge amount of respect if they can stop Hiruden, their prince, from taking action, and it's also unclear as to what the current situation is regarding ELBAPH's royal family. Since Harald is dead, Loki chained up, and Hiruden has taken the path of piracy and is still only a prince. And although he intends to become the king one day, who is ruling now? His mother, maybe another sibling? Is there any other giant royalty? Thus leaving maybe Elder Jarl in charge, or maybe Dory and Broggy now hold the highest position of power on the island, which they only just learned about since they only just returned. Maybe it's this shadowy figure who is in charge, who knows. But back to Dory and Broggy. All of this stuff with Loki, everything with Big Mom, everything with Mother Carmel, they were not there for any of it. They weren't there for the death of their king, and they weren't there to imprison Loki. They would have only just learned about Loki's existence within the past few months. So that's a face-off I want to see, one between Loki and Dory and Broggy, who right now, with what we know, I think are the three strongest giants on ELBAPH. And so finally comes the ELBAPH arc, the most recent in the country's history. The first 6 Straw Hats were captured by a member of Hiruden's crew, Road the Navigator, and were put in a diorama only for them to break out. Meanwhile, the rest of the crew, along with Lilith, Kuma and Bonnie, are making their way to ELBAPH, still alongside the giant warrior pirates. The major footnote here is that Luffy has come face to face with the shame of ELBAPH, Loki. So begins the discussion. Will Luffy free the Prince of the Giants? And if he does, what will be the consequences of his actions? Loki may very well be the strongest giant alive and one of the strongest characters alive, period. And from his own words, he will bring about the end of the world, which means kicking off the final war, Ragnarok. Is Loki even a bad guy? With everything pointing to him being the big bad of the arc, what are the odds that he isn't? And everything leading to his imprisonment was a misunderstanding. Regardless, he's got one of the best character designs in the story, and his full reveal unironically had me more excited than even the reveal of the 5 Elders' powers. So when chapter 1131 comes out, I would prefer it if the focus stayed on Loki and Luffy, although even if not, I'm happy with being anywhere on ELBAPH because we've finally truly arrived.